What's up, YouTube? It's your girl, allegedly A-lease, and this week, will Paige finally get her reset? Or will it be nothing more than a setback from Chris? Come on, y'all, let's talk about As the Page Turns. Still not it? Let's talk about Married at First Sight. We open with Virginia's drink, Eric, and Eric's ego. They're discussing passwords and social media, and Eric says that Virginia should not be on social media liking ex's pictures, any of them, including your 5th grade boo. She says, I can't decide if I'm going to be annoyed by this or just pick a whole nother battle to pop off on you. And of course, Eric with his smart mouth says, oh, you do get annoyed. It's all fun and games till her homeboys come over there and pull you back outside for your mouth. Now, after 24 days, Dr. Viviana finally decides to do some work. And she stops by with Bree and Vince first. Now, for someone to be so MIA, she sure knew the good, the bad, and the Vinny. Yet you decided to wait to day 24 to do some work. If my mama wasn't watching this, I'd tell you what you ain't. Now, as Bree is explaining the champagne situation, you can see Vince leave, and Godfather Vinny steps in. You can see it. He doesn't say anything, but you can certainly see it. And Dr. Viviana says, listen, before you go all Godfather on your wife the next time, how about this? How about you try saying, hey, what did you mean by that before you pop off? Why don't you ask some questions first? One, it'll let her know that maybe you're not in the mood to play. And it'll also help you stay cool and keep this Godfather Vinny from popping in. Now, Vince says, y'all are out here treating me like a delicate flower. It's not like I'm a delicate flower. Yes, you are. And so Dr. Viviana reads right past that and says, okay, so what about the dancing classes? And immediately he looks over at Bree and says, don't talk, just listen. Dun, 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 dun. I'm sorry, I had a Jodeci moment. But literally, he decides he's going to narrate this story. Dr. Viv says that she's noticing a pattern of where he's trying to be smooth, and when life won't let him be great, then Vince walks out and Godfather Vinny walks in. And he kind of takes it out on Bree. And immediately he looks at Bree and says, you know what, you're right, Doc. He said, Bree, I apologize for my behavior and my actions because you went out of your way to set up such a special day. And so this is just such a sweet couple. Meanwhile, Chris is knocking on the door to the home that he is supposed to be sharing with his wife. They sit and Paige watches Chris text Mercedes. Playing his phone. In silence. Dr. Viv knocks on the door, and I swear that Chris is just as childish as the various clothes options that he wears. He says, it's your house. I'll let you get it. With that stupid smirk on his face. As Dr. Viv sits down, she says, a lot has happened. Yes, ma'am, it has, and it's only day 24. And she says, we're privy to all of the information. So why haven't the artists formerly known as the experts pulled production on these two? And why did Dr. Cal act so shocked by all of this information if y'all are privy to it? Anyhow, Viv says, Chris, I don't know you. And Paige don't either, girl, so y'all in the same boat, huh? She says that Chris is not the same guy that they met prior to the marriage, aka when they interviewed him. We know. And Chris says, prior to this marriage, I was the same guy I was all the way back to when I was born. That's what's wrong with you. No growth. He says that he's lost the capability of making sound decisions. That was before, okay? Don't blame this show on that. That's always been you. Same Chris, different camera. That's all. Now, Viv does the same thing she does every season, and that's walk on eggshells when it comes to a man's feelings when he's clearly in the wrong and not holding him accountable. She says, I know, it's a lot. Chris created the lot. She then asks Paige what it's been like for her, and Paige says it's like reliving a nightmare. Well, Chris keeps pouring cold water reality on you, but for some reason you keep falling back asleep, hoping that there's some happy ending in this nightmare. Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, breaking news. Dr. Viv finally asked the question that we all want to know. Paige, why stay in this marriage? Now, Paige says that the woman God intended her to be was a supportive wife in spite of. No, ma'am. Flag on the play. Holding on to God's name in vain like that. No, ma'am. Just because you say that it is God does not make it such, okay? You could say that before you got married, God was involved in every physical relationship that you had with a man. That doesn't mean that it's so. Just because God don't come down and say, no, I didn't, Paige think that she can just throw God's name in there. Baby, you're going to have to stop. You wanted to be there, not God. You wanted to be there. And Dr. Viv says, okay, sis, this is your story, all right? Do you even know what you want to accomplish in this relationship? And she's like, oh, I'm real basic, if I could just start with a phone call. This your husband, girl. That's all you want is a phone call? See, Paige gonna stop working up my blood pressure trying to take up for her, because I've come to the realization that Paige doesn't even understand to want better. You've got to want better for yourself before anyone else in your support circle can want better for you. Do better, Paige. Want more than a phone call from your husband. You should have said, I want my husband to be in this house every single day. That's the basic. That's the basic. Is him closing his eyes to you, waking up to you. You've got to want better before we can want better for you. Do better, Paige. Now, Reverend Chris says that he doesn't want to feel pressure in calling her every day. Bro, that's your wife. Now, for once in Chris's life, he finally tells the truth. He says, my heart is just not in this. And rather than hear what Chris or listen to what Chris is saying, Dr. Viv is hearing him and trying to figure out a response. And she says, you've just got to change what motivates you. See, that's why they shouldn't let you talk. They shouldn't let you talk because all you understand is physical. You don't understand emotional. So you need to figure out how to better comprehend the emotional aspects when people are not handling the physical aspects. Dr. Viv. Paige says in her confessional, this is some BS. No, ma'am, Pam. This didn't just start overnight. BS didn't just start flying your way overnight. This been going on, and you've been putting up with it. Chris says hanging out, going out to dinner, and having in-person conversations. And Dr. Viv says, Chris, are you slow? I'm sorry, that wasn't Dr. Viv. That was Dr. Me that said that. But Dr. Viv says, Chris, you realize that actually takes way more effort to do than just picking up the phone and calling Paige as she requested when you went all Ken on us and was like, I feel pressure. Chris says it's just all so confusing. And Dr. Viv looks lost. Don't, sis. Let me break down this little player's mind to you. In my humble opinion, it's just my opinion. I want to hear yours down in the chat. But Chris and Mercedes are in on this together. And Mercedes has agreed to the filming, but she's not going to agree to anything outside of when the cameras and the production crew are present. Having daily phone calls may not include production. And so he fears Mercedes walking into the frame during the FaceTime or walking by and trying to have conversations with him while he's on the phone with his wife. And so because his ex-fiance is not down for that, he's not going to move forward with calls, and he's okay with doing everything in person because she won't be there with him, and he can manipulate Paige to continue to film. Now, much props to Dr. Viv because Paige says, see, what are we doing here? And with a straight, solid face, Dr. Viv says, I don't know, what are we doing, Paige? Ryan and Clara go through the questions that were sent by the artists formerly known as the experts, and something is off here. The first question asks, what would make it hard for him to be intimate with Clara? And he says, trust and comfortability. Then they get a question on how to improve on their physical intimacy. And Clara says, oh, pick me. Let's just have it. Now, the question that lets me know for certain that something is definitely not right here is, what method of intimacy do you prefer? And he says, I'll take it however I can get it. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a man who is innocent to the world. If he was Irish, he would point out his pure white undershirts as an indication of his purity. Seriously, it's either one or two things. It's either that he's being over conservative and cautious because of his religious parents and out of respect for them, or he really is pure. Clara explains why a lack of physical intimacy is of such great concern to her. She says in her previous relationship, the guy didn't want her in any way, and so she just felt undesired. And while I feel sorry for Clara on that one, no one deserves that, please don't put all your value in the physical. There are a million other telltale signs outside of just the physical to tell you that something's going wrong. I mean, you could have a Chris that addresses the physical each and every day, but dog walks your emotions and messes you up in the head, Clara. Meanwhile, across the complex, Paige is negotiating time with her husband, Chris. Side note, why do you experts keep leaving Paige with this man? Why? You realize she's not going to leave on her own. She is the epitome of a dream girl. Like, she is sitting up here hoping, praying, and wishing that something just hits Chris over the head and makes him all of a sudden want to be a part of this marriage. Why won't you just take Paige with you, experts? Anyway, Paige finally gets Chris to agree to a date at home. Chris says that he's going to bring the food to her. Wait, but you just said that you wanted to go out. You wanted to go out and eat. You wanted to be out. Remember, hang out, go out to eat? Paige tries to come up with an activity for them to do while they're hanging in. And Chris says, how about you lead Bible study? Paige, at this point, you're leading everything about this marriage. Chris says, that's the problem. We haven't been including God in anything. No, that's your problem. You haven't been including God in anything. That's all that this girl talks about is God. So blame that on you, Reverend Chris. Now on to Chris's sister, Haley. Dr. Viv stops by to see Chris and, Haley and Jacob, and she gives her finest fake response. We've had our ups and downs, but we have a reset moment. Girl, do you know that your brother just said that last week to Paige? Wow. Jacob brings up to Dr. Viv the issue of Haley staying out all night with Paige or at Paige's house. And for some reason, Haley seems to think that this is acceptable communication to send a quick text to your husband and say, yep, I'm going to be out all night. Don't wait up. What? You're married. Y'all, the look on her face when Dr. Viv said, it sounds like you don't know how to differentiate between the things that you used to do as a single person versus what you do as a married person. That look was priceless. Haley is looking for someone to condone her behavior, but let me remind you that Paige would not entertain you if she didn't have to sit over across the complex and negotiate time with her husband. So if Chris was there for more than 2 seconds of filming, then you would never hear from Paige. You would never see Paige, Haley. But in my humble, alleged opinion, I think that Paige was never there. If anyone has noticed, when Paige is filming and they're at that apartment, she always has her purse on her shoulder and she sets it down, or you can see her stuff right there where she's just recently set it down. I don't even think Paige stays there. I think she just comes in to film and then she goes back to her house. I think what is happening is she actually got the key from Paige to stay at Paige's house and crash there for the night. And I hate that Dr. Viv didn't dive deeper into that. Like, why are you staying at another married woman's house? You both are married. You should be coming home every single night. Dr. Viv asks, well, how did we get to friend zone status? And Jacob says, you know, the first few days were great. And Dr. Viv says, oh, is that when you all consummated the marriage? Jacob further spills the tea by saying that Haley told him the only reason that she did it was because she felt that she was supposed to since she's married. If that does not sound like Chris, y'all. Chris said that the reason he consummated his marriage over and over and over and over was because he wanted to feel a connection or see if he could feel attracted to Paige from the physical connection. I think the reason that Haley consummated the marriage with Jacob was because she wanted to also say, I consummated my marriage, because everyone else seemed to be doing so well in their relationships outside of Paige and Chris that she wanted to be able to say, me too, we're doing great. See, look, we've already consummated our marriage. I think she really is one of those friends that tries to keep up with the other friends by any means necessary. The marriage, because she was the only one that was still single in their circle of friends, or so she said. And here we are now with the circle, this new circle of friends where everyone seems to be happy and lovey-dovey for the most part. She also wants to seem happy and lovey-dovey. Now Haley starts crying again and saying, I didn't want to hurt his feelings. So Viv asks her straight up, is this 80s thing a turnoff to you? And she says, I normally connect with people so easy peasy, and it's just not easy peasy. Haley then tries to give some examples of how she's put in work to try and build a connection with Jacob, but Jacob hasn't met her halfway. And the examples are poor at best, sis. It's either her drinking and she doesn't want to drink alone, so she needs a drinking buddy, or she's trying to change his style, who he is. Haley certainly thinks that she's Miss Perfect, but her style and her personality could use some cosmetic surgery. Before Dr. Viv leaves, she assigns them a task of residing in the same room and kissing every morning and every night before they go to bed. Moving on, Eric and Virginia sit down with Dr. Viv, and Virginia says, girl, let me tell you, I am over here walking on eggshells trying not to have issues with this man. Eric says that they have such strongly different views about the country and life. At this point, they can't even decide if the toilet paper goes over or under on the toilet roll. Now, as Dr. Viv is explaining to them that they're both going to have an open mind about what the other is passionate about and compromise and meet somewhere in the middle, Eric just abruptly screams out as if he's Stewart on Mad TV, I believe what I believe and that's it. Don't. And Eric continues to blurt out, I'm not waiting 10 years to have kids. So you're going to have a baby by yourself? Because that's the only way you're demanding someone to do something of that magnitude. You better get comfortable with your little dog kids and enjoy them, because until Virginia's ready, you'll get over it. You'll be waiting. Now I'm going to get back on my high horse for 2 seconds again. Where was all that energy when Virginia's friend pulled you outside and checked you, Eric? Vince puts together a romantic fort in the living room for Bree, and they play truth or dare with food. How cute. Back over with Ryan and Clara, Dr. Viv sits down and meets with them, and she says, well, tell me what's going well. And Ryan says, I think that we just naturally vibe. Like, if we would have met in passing, it would be the same natural chemistry. And when Dr. Viv asks, so what are some of the struggles, Clara becomes quite outspoken and direct. This lack of physical thing isn't working for me, and somebody needs to come fix it, and it needs to happen now. Beloved, this is not Ayanla Fix My Love Life. Do better, Claire. Ryan is the guy on the road doing 25 and a 35, and he looks over at you and says, what? The limit is 35. It doesn't say I have to go 35. That's the limit. I'm taking my time here. I'm building trust. Dr. Viv says, I hear you say that you need time to build trust, but what about your wife's needs? She also asked Ryan, why do you continue to put the brakes on this natural progression of love? And he says, listen, I'm thinking big picture here. I'm thinking 20, 50, 100 years from now. I'm trying to make this thing a lifetime deal. Y'all, Ryan's so full of excuses at this point that he's like, listen, I'm trying to build a foundation with Claire, but you know, some of the materials are on back order at Home Depot, and I would go over to Lowe's, but you know, all my points are over here at Home Depot, so I just got to wait on the back orders, stuff to get back in. And Dr. Viv was like, okay, Ryan, let me step out the room. Let me talk to Claire, because I see what allegedly A-lease sees, and we need to talk about it. As soon as Ryan steps out, Dr. Viv leans in and says, girl, you realize you may have a whole Iris and Keith purity situation going on here. And she says, no, Ryan would have told me. Maybe that's not something he wants to share with you, Clara. Maybe you are a stranger, Clara. You want to give your heart and soul to someone day one, and maybe he's on day 24 and he's not ready to tell you something that deep. Upon Ryan's return, Clara says she doesn't intertwine physical and emotional feelings together. As a matter of fact, she's not even banking on any type of emotional relationship with Ryan. She says that's just never been her. But she's definitely along for the ride for the physical. Married at first sight, if no one ever told you, your screening process is trash. Because here it is, this young conservative man is trying to uphold his religious values, respect his parents, and Clara's like, let's get it in night one. Two polar opposites. And sometimes someone can teach you something, but you have to be open to it. And Clara's not open. She's just trying to get this physical and get on with it. Later, Dr. Viv circles back around to Haley because Haley's not fooling anyone but herself. She feeds Haley her own helping of humble pie by pulling her questionnaire. While you're in there, can you pull Chris's questionnaire out too? Asking for a few friends. The question is, how picky are you when it comes to relationships? And Haley's response was, I'm very picky. I normally pick a guy apart before I even have the chance to get to know him. And rather than take accountability, she says, well, those guys, I saw red flags and so I needed to walk away. Whereas Jacob, I just don't have an attraction to him, so I can't build a connection. Okay, so even if you get to know a guy, Haley, you still pick them apart and find a reason to leave. So at some point you have to say, what's the common denominator? And stop picking on people and pick at your brain and figure out what's causing you to pick at people. You know, Haley, you're not the first participant to feel this way. Jamie and Doug. Jamie was quite outspoken about how unattracted she was to Doug, and it was quite embarrassing to watch back. But keep in mind, that was the very first season ever of Married at First Sight. Nobody had ever been through that before. So she handled it like a champ, but we actually got to see her attraction progress on screen. Like on screen by the end of the season, you could see how much she adored Doug. And then you have Karen, who it wasn't until the cameras stopped rolling that we got a chance to see the bond between Miles and Karen. I don't know if it's social media gave her some insight to how wonderful Miles is, and these girls will line up in his DMs if you don't want to act right. I don't know if it was now that the cameras are gone and no one's telling us how to feel, we can have a moment to really fill out each other and get to know each other and vibe with each other. Or if it was just the time that they needed together. It could have been a mix of things, but at least give it a fair shot is my point. There are several people that have been right there in your shoes, and now they're thriving today in their marriages, but it's because they got out of their own way. Across the complex, Virginia purchases a timer so that Eric can let her get a sentence out. So during his time of chatter, He basically rants about his lack of trust. He continues to talk about that, but he doesn't talk about what steps he's going to take to try and trust Virginia, who is a completely different person from anyone else in his past. When it's Virginia's turn, Virginia actually breaks down to him so he would listen to her and hear what she's saying about why she's so 50-50 about wanting to have kids, since he took time to go off on her in front of Dr. Viv. And when she explains it, it makes total sense. What she had to go through in the divorce of her parents, she just doesn't want that for a child that she brings into the world. She wants them to thrive and be in a happy family where she's not, or he's not being pulled between the two parents. And honestly, with Eric not being able to talk, I think he finally understood where Virginia was coming from. You have to support her so that she feels comfortable. She's not saying no, she's nervous about it. And based off of her history, her parents told you day one, but based off of her history, she just wants to make sure that this is right first. Back at Paige's spot, Chris brings dinner, and he decides to bring her Harold's chicken. Now, I don't know why Paige didn't tell him what she wanted to eat, and it's clear that it's his decision on what they were going to eat because, one, she asked, "What did you bring us?" Two, he says, "I want to introduce you to Chicago's finest Harold's chicken." Paige, why didn't you tell this man what you wanted to eat? When you go out, you have options. They bring you a menu. You have options. Literally, Chris is the only one in this relationship with options, clearly. Now, after Reverend Chris tells Paige to bless the food, he then reminds her, "You're supposed to be leading Bible study." And Paige jokingly says, "Well, what did you prepare for us?" And Reverend Chris says, "Nothing. I've been busy." Child of God, I can call my pastor right now. I can call my associate pastor. I could pick a random clergy member just from a list that we have. And I guarantee you, if I reach out to them, they got a word, a quick word for a nice, cute little Bible study. And Chris says he has nothing. Y'all, I'm really starting to believe that Chris went to Vacation Bible School and got a certificate of completion, and now he thinks that he's an ordained minister. Paige asked Chris to read Isaiah 55. And while Isaiah 55 discusses the restoration, I think that she was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. But I will say, the funny part is the very first verse says, "Come who are all thirsty." Chris is thirsty. Now, Paige makes a beeline in their Bible study to start talking about their friendship. And Chris makes a sea line to slap her in the face with his weekly, take that, bad news, baby. He tells Paige that he bought a Mercedes for Mercedes. Side note, how is Chris able to buy anything for anybody? Don't you owe Subway still for eating fresh? And also, how is it that Mercedes is not an able-bodied person to get her own car? Now, okay, you said she had an accident 6 years ago. 6 years ago. She could have gotten a car since then. She's a full able-bodied woman. The way she walked into that room and sat down to talk to Paige, she can walk onto a car dealership and buy herself a car. Listen, I'm not trying to bring Mercedes down by any means necessary, but at some point you have to ask yourself, what person shows up calmly after you found out that your man went behind your back and got married, allegedly, and then you find out that you're with child? You sit in front of her as cool, calm, and collective as you want to. You say you're done with him, and then you still have this car. Okay, but if you're done with him, then you don't need the car either. There's just some things that aren't adding up. And again, as I stated, allegedly they just came back from Mexico together. So at some point, you got to put the pieces of the puzzle together and understand that Chris and Mercedes and production, they're punking all of us. I feel like I'm on an episode of Punked. Haley allows her husband to sleep in the master bedroom with her, but tells him, don't you even think about a kiss. Haley, you make it so hard to like you. You really do. Like, meet that man somewhere. Okay, you're not comfortable full out kissing him. Then give him a kiss on the cheek. At least let him know that you're trying. You make this man feel like there's something morbidly wrong with him when really it's you. Virginia puts together a cute little romantic dessert room for Eric. And kudos to Virginia for overlooking his smart mouth, his stuck in his ways moments, and his lack of trust, to show him that she is all in. This one wins it for me today, y'all. I am so proud of Virginia. And that's where we leave it. So I want to know, is Ryan hiding a secret about his purity? And do you think that Paige will continue to overlook yet another punch that Chris has thrown? Y'all, let's talk about it down in the comments. Until the next time, I'm allegedly A-lease. Peace.